Boom! Here we have a new free plugin from Waves. This is StudioVerse Audio Effects and StudioVerse Instruments. So if you had the original StudioRack, StudioVerse Audio Effects is basically just like a rebranding of that with this attached cloud-based preset finder built in. There's also some other cool things which we'll go through here. We also have an instrument rack here, or a different rack for instruments. So this is free, absolutely free. You can download it right now. Of course, I'll have a link in the description below. So in StudioVerse Audio Effects, this allows you to create different plugin chains and quickly recall them. You can just click here and add whatever Waves effects that you happen to have. But it's also compatible with VST3 plugins. So, stuff from Plugin Alliance, Native Instruments, Softtube, etc., etc. We can also load up right here within the Waves StudioVerse Audio Effects. Now, StudioVerse Audio Effects is a stupid name. It really should have just been called StudioRack Plus. Much better name overall. If Waves, if you want that name, send me $10,000 to my PayPal and you can have StudioRack Plus. Much better name than StudioVerse Audio Effects. And then over here on StudioVerse Instruments, this is where you can add a bunch of different layers to your instruments, add multiple MIDI instruments, MIDI plugins, things like that. And of course, play all of that. I don't have any instrument loaded right now, but I can always come in here, remove the plugin, click in here, and then load up whatever instruments, Waves instruments that I happen to have, or of course, third-party instruments, things like Superior Drummer 3, Contact, Massive, whatever I want. Load up a bunch of different layers and play all of those back over here in I keep calling it StudioRack, the StudioVerse Instruments. So let's look at some of the features that we have here in StudioRack Audio Effects or StudioVerse Audio Effects. I have this guitar right here. Okay, so over here in the search, let's just type in, guitar. Of course, we can use our tags here, say electric guitar, and that goes online. It searches through all of the cloud-hosted presets, and then I can just choose something. Of course, you can build up your own stuff right here. But maybe I want, here's Essential Electric Guitar. What's that? Let's just click on that. It downloads that preset, loads it up over here, loads up all the different plugins. That's not going to work because it doesn't include an amp. Let's go here. Let's try another one. Just click on it. You can see that it downloads. And over here, it loaded up our preset. It's got a parallel split in there. MD, MX fuzz, and those are voltage amp. You can see all that. And we'll play that back. And then we have all of these different macro knobs, and these macro knobs can adjust, several different plugins all at once. So maybe turn some of that down, cab type. You can switch through that without having to come in here to your voltage amp. You can see that macro knob in this case is mapped over here. You can of course set all of this up yourself as well. Okay, and then just go through here, find a bunch of different presets. Of course, again, set up your own presets as well. But this plugin also does something pretty cool, StudioVerse Audio Effects. First, we come up here and we'll just do a full reset. Just click right there, make sure everything's empty. Okay, so here we have
Lonely in the mornings when you're gone.
This vocal here. Let me just turn it down just a bit. Now, if I don't know exactly what I need or what I want, there's a really cool feature built in here called Search by Audio. So I can click that, then just play back.
Happy in the evenings, we get along. I just want you with me all the time. Yeah.
And it starts building up exactly what this is. It's a female vocal. Of course, I had that electric guitar that I typed in earlier. But as you play back there, it just fills all of that in for you. And then here you have a bunch of different presets all ready for you, all ready to go. Now, of course, depending on the amount of Waves plugins that you have, you may not be able to use, all of these different presets. I have Waves Mercury, so I have basically everything. If you're subscribed to the Waves Creative Access, of course, you'll have access to everything. If you just have a few, then, obviously you won't be able to use every single preset.
Lonely in the mornings when you're gone, happy in the evening.
So that's pretty cool, right? You can just scan your actual audio and then it finds a bunch of presets for you that are hosted in the cloud that you can then download and quickly check out.
The evening. evenings we get along. I just want you with me all the time. Yeah.
That one's actually pretty cool. So it has R comp in there, CLA 76, a bunch of different ones. We got EQ there and a parallel split. So if I want to create my own preset, again, very simple. I can just click here and I'll just randomly just grab some different plugins and throw in here. Okay, so that's CLA Epic. We'll just grab some other things that I happen to have. Okay, so here I have 4 different plugins. And if I click on them, you can see the interface pops up. If I want to keep the interface open, just click this little pin right there. And then whenever I click on another one, that one will stay open. I can pin that one there. I can get the other one, so on and so forth. I can also close everything just by using a close all. I can then start setting up, you can get as crazy as you want with this. I can do like a parallel split, as I mentioned earlier. So then I'm basically splitting off that audio into, think of it like as an aux track or something. And I can start adding more effects into this parallel split. Right now we just have 2 racks, but we can hit this plus here, and that's going to give us another one and another one and another one, all the way up to 8. So you can get a massive amount of plugins. Just click here to turn on each different split there, and load up a massive amount of plugins here. Get as complicated as you want and save all of that within a single preset. You also have a multi-band split. So if you want to affect maybe the top end, the middle, and the low end differently, then you can do a multi-band split. Okay, so then you have your different crossovers. Again, hit that plus. It's going to give you a different rack to put things in. Again, set up your crossover right here. The crossover is just the area that that rack is going to affect. Okay, so think of it like that. So set this up. So affect just the low end over here. You get the idea of how this works. So now we have a ton of stuff in our rack, right? And if I want to save all of this stuff, I can create my own preset. Let me click that so that closes it down. We can save our own presets by coming up here to the save icon. But before we do that, let's set up maybe some macro knobs or something like that, right? So if let's just open up a few of these here. I'll pin them just so we have them open and we can see how this works. So I'll get these 3 open right here. So say I want to affect or to adjust a bunch of things at once. I can just click on an empty macro knob, just left click or even right click, and it brings up this menu. So for CLA Epic, maybe I want to affect the mix with this knob. So as you see, as I move my macro, the mix moves right there. But maybe I also want to affect some other things and some other plugins. So again, I'll just right click here, and maybe I want our TG mastering, and we'll go to maybe spreader, attach that to this same macro. You can see that moves. Move this out of the way. We can see that both of those parameters are now moving. All right, and just continue like this, right click. Maybe I want HEQ, and we'll do the HMF gain. Just grab this so we can actually see it. And now I adjust, and right there, that high mid frequency will adjust. So all 3 of those are now adjusting in tandem. And then of course I can name this macro. So I can just double click and then give it whatever name you want, maybe shine, sparkle, mix, whatever you want. And then of course go through setting up all of your different macros like that. You can also edit your macros by clicking down here. Okay, set up your macro ranges, a bunch of different stuff. Not going to get too deep into it here because you could spend hours on this here. There's really a lot you can do in this absolutely free plugin. So now that we have, let's just say we have everything set up, and now we want to actually save this, we can come up here to our save icon, and we can save it to StudioVerse or save it to a local file. So obviously just for you, but let's say we want to save it to StudioVerse, give it, whatever name you want, add whatever tags. So if it's for drums or vocals or guitar, whatever, add all of your tags right there. We can even add an audio ID. So by adding an audio ID, you can help others find your chain in StudioVerse. Just like we did previously, hit that button, play back your audio.
Is it too much to ask?
Okay, whatever. And it's going to assign it an audio ID. It also tags it female vocal there. So that's another thing that you can do. You can also come over here, select images, whatever it happens to be, upload an image, and then of course add a description right there, and then publish that to StudioVerse. Of course, you'll hit save. I'm not going to do it in this case, but publish that to StudioVerse, and then people will be able to come in here and search for female vocals or click on our different tags and be able to find your preset. So all that's pretty cool, right? And again, you can also do this with your VST3 plugin. So it's not just Waves plugins. If you don't have any Waves plugins, you may want to go ahead and get this. Of course, in that case, you're not going to be able to use any of the presets, but it's still useful to be able to have some sort of a chainer, some sort of a VST3 host where you can create a bunch of different presets and easily share them. Again, I can, maybe I want to come up here, just do a full reset. And then maybe I want to create some sort of a plugin chain using all iZotope plugins, right? Maybe I want something from iZotope here. We got Ozone, don't share there. Ozone 11 here. So we can, of course, have that in there. We can even save presets with our third-party plugins, as you can see right there. Now, why would you want to use something like this instead of maybe the built-in function of your DAW? So I use Studio One. Studio One has basically always had the ability to create these chains. It also has the ability to create things like parallel splits. If I come up here, we also have we already have the ability to, create parallel splits and multi-band splits and stuff like that right within Studio One. But if I then switch over to Pro Tools, I then have to go through and, recreate that chain. Now, Pro Tools now has the ability to create your own chains within it. I think pretty much every modern DAW finally has this feature built in. But again, if you're moving between DAWs, I can't share my Studio One plugin chains with Pro Tools, or I can't share it with DaVinci Resolve, which is a video editor. Or maybe you have one DAW, but you're working with other people and you have Studio One, they have Logic, or they have Pro Tools or something like that. Again, we can't directly share our Studio One plugin chains with Pro Tools or DaVinci Resolve, et cetera, et cetera. So if instead you set those up within your StudioVerse Audio Effects or StudioVerse Instruments, or it should just be called StudioRack Plus, if you create them in here, save them in here, you can either send them the preset file or, as we showed, just publish that to StudioVerse. All of these presets are online, and then they can directly download it and use it. And if you're collaborating with someone else, that's going to be a much easier way to share your presets, and especially if you're using things like parallel splits or multi-band splits or whatever, and you can just directly share that with someone else. So that's why you might want to use something like your StudioVerse Audio Effects instead of creating all of your different plugin chains within your DAW. All right, so over a few things that are pretty self-evident. If I like something, I can go to my liked, and well, it didn't update that. Let me make sure it's liked there. Then go over to like, and then you can actually see all of your liked presets. Here's your recent presets that you found. And then any user chains that you set up can be found over there. Again, this is the self-evident stuff. Over here, we can change the size of the GUI, make it a little bit bigger. Come down here, VST3. This is where you can scan for your VST3 plugins, which you'll probably do that at startup anyway, but you have to do that before you can use your VST3 plugins, your third-party VST3 plugins within your StudioVerse Audio Effects. You can also click this button here if you don't want that StudioVerse window attached to your StudioRack, and close that. I can also hit this button, and that's going to hide that StudioVerse little side panel, or click right here. It opens right back up. Now we also have the StudioVerse Instruments. You can probably guess how this works. Pretty much the same way. We have tags down here that we can use, maybe something for EDM. Of course, type in whatever you want. We'll just grab something and it loaded up. Right? Click on here. This one, in this case, has a bunch of different instrument layers. You can layer things up, play a bunch of different things in unison, and then also add different plugins to your chain. So again, instead of creating this in your DAW or just having, stacking things as plugins in your DAW, you can save all of that stuff, very complex chains, all within your StudioVerse Instruments, and recall that whenever you want, share with other people, etc., etc. We can also, if I can right click here, just remove that one. I can also use my VST3 plugins within the Instruments version of this rack. I can also, let me come over here and come down to VST3. I can also use things like, maybe I want to use Contact or Massive and set up a very complex chain. And again, instead of doing that in your DAW, you might want to do it within StudioVerse, so that way you can easily recall it if it's something that you're using all the time. Same stuff with your, all your different macros. a lot of stuff you can do. It's pretty simple to figure out overall, and it's definitely one that you should pick up, especially because it is free. I'll show you where to get it here in just a second, but you know how I've been talking about AI and things like that for the past, since the end of 2023, and what this really is here, what StudioVerse Audio Effects and the instrument plugin really are, is they're sort of Wave's first step into that new AI paradigm shift. Because as you can see, all of these different presets, as we call things up, they're currently relying on essentially current technology or older technology to reproduce certain sounds or certain settings, certain overall outcomes to audio. They're still relying on the actual plugins themselves. So we click that, you can see all the different plugins that are within this this single preset here. I mean, look at all these different plugins. So currently, whenever you call up a preset, you're actually getting these different plugins with all of their settings, all of their parameter changes, right? All of that, and then that's going to create the overall effect to your track. So what's going to happen in the future is once Waves gets all of their different audio effects modeled and turns all of their individual effects into a huge AI model, you probably won't need to have these individual plugins installed or these individual interfaces, although you might still have some. But instead of having all of these different individual interfaces, we're just going to have basically like an end result where you'll be able to call up, I want a female vocal, I want a guitar, I want a distorted guitar, metal guitar, certain type of drum, whatever, call that up. And just like this here, all of our presets here are stored in the cloud. Eventually, these different outcomes of sound, I'll call it, will also be stored in the cloud, and you'll be able to quickly call up, hey, a trippy trap tune. I can click that, and then immediately it will download. It will be processed perhaps in the cloud, perhaps locally, who knows? And then it will affect your track, and you'll probably have a few different macro controls, but you won't have the need for literal individual plugins, installed on your system, more than likely anyway. If you have something like Tune Track Easy Mix, that's sort of the way plugins are going, to where you're just choosing outcomes, right? You're choosing the overall sound outcome. You're not having to learn difficult things like, where should I set this? Where should I set that? How do EQs work or compressors work? I can just call up a preset, a certain sound, a certain outcome. I can apply that to my track. I think that's kind of where a lot of music is going, where people are just using presets that are set up and ready to go, and they're not really delving into the complexities of why you set things certain ways, or why you set compressors and thresholds and ratios. A lot of times people today really just want to be able to call up a preset, have it applied to their track, and and get it done. Even if you don't want to use this part of it, close it down. It's still totally worth getting, just to have this StudioRack Plus, as I call it, just to have this rack chainer within your DAW, that you can then share those presets very easily between different DAWs, between collaborators, between your DAW and your video editor, etc., etc. All right, so now if you want to pick this up for yourself, you can head right over here. Of course, the link will be in the description below. Now, this installs in sort of a weird way. I don't know why they chose this, but if you come down here and say you just want the audio effects or whatever, no matter what you click here, by the way, click install now, it's going to open up Waves Central. You'll then be greeted with this page, which kind of makes it look like you have to demo all of the Waves plugins or have the Waves Creative Access subscription in order to get this, but you don't. Like I said, the install process is kind of weird. So come over here to install products, and you might say, well, let's go to my products. You look through my products, you're not going to find your StudioVerse Instruments or StudioVerse Effects. Instead, come over here to all products, and then scroll way down till we find the S's, way down here to the S's. And then eventually you're going to come across StudioVerse Audio Effects, StudioVerse Instruments, or StudioVerse. So you can do one of these, two of these, or you can just do the StudioVerse, which is a bundle of both of these. So if you click that, then you're going to get both of them, or just do both of them like that. It doesn't matter how you do this, right? And then you can install, let me just click this again. Then you can install and you'll have that. Okay. You'll have to also log in. That just sort of lets it know if you have an active subscription or not. But again, you do not need an active subscription to use StudioVerse Audio Effects or StudioVerse Instruments. In fact, you don't need any Waves plugins at all. All right. So head down to the description below, click that link and go get your free StudioVerse. God, I hate this name is so long. Go get your free StudioVerse Audio Effects and your StudioVerse Instruments for free from Waves.
Riding on those waves in the heart of a song, from the first light of dawn till the night grows long. Every beat and measure, every chord I play, Waves plugins guide me every step of the way.